Hello everyone and welcome back to Destiny. It has been an insane couple weeks trying to grind up to 600 power, getting yourself as powerful as you can be so you can take on Last Wish, and last night me and my fire team got through the first encounter and that was a pretty big moment for us. Because up until that point, the real challenge was getting our power as high as we can. So in this video, I want to put together a small group of tips and tricks to help you streamline your power grinding process and save on precious materials. And until Bungie discovers a way to increase and improve the Masterwork core economy, I want to concentrate on tips that will help you save Masterwork cores instead of spending them, and also getting you material rich in every other aspect. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so before we talk about Infusion, it's important to remind you of the concept of smart loot. Regardless of what you think and what you may have experienced, smart loot does in fact work. It hasn't ever really not worked unless it's some kind of bug that is known by Bungie. So what is smart loot? Well, as many of you may have guessed, smart loot is a system inside of Destiny 2 that looks at your highest light potential across all of the gear that you owned. And then based on that information, it then grants you the appropriate rewards based on what you're doing. So what do you mean by potential? Well, it means that you don't necessarily have to be wearing your most powerful gear for it to count. It can be on you, in your vaults, or even on a different character, at least in regards to weapons anyways. Whenever determining your rewards, the game imagines you wearing your most powerful stuff. Now, of course, this does still abide by rules like only being able to equip a single exotic weapon or armor piece at a time, so keep that in mind. So what does this mean for Infusion? Well, the lesson here is not to infuse gear when it isn't really necessary. Infusion, as you may have noticed, costs significantly more inside of Year 2, and regardless of how you feel about it, it was done to bring a bigger sense of investment into your gear, in addition to helping you diversify your weapon choices. If it wasn't for the increased cost, I will have definitely just stuck with my Perfect Paradox, Inaugural Address, and Whisper loadout for probably forever. It's gotten me to discover new gear and I really like that. When you get a powerful reward that you don't care for anyways, hold on to it and let the game use it to calculate other rewards. Don't feel like you need to infuse it into something more quote-unquote useful. This will help you save lots of precious materials as you work up your power, and we do have quite the ladder to climb. Soon enough, you will find something more interesting and even higher than that one, so when that time comes, you can go ahead and safely dismantle it and get the rewards and the cores out of it. Now, you might be saying, it's not always about gear, I just want to be at my strongest at all times. Well, you might not need to always be at your strongest. Think about the activities you're playing. Crucible doesn't really matter for the most part. The most difficult strikes are at 500 power, which means that anything above 540, you won't be doing any additional damage. And then we've got Gambit, which doesn't really require that much power. It does for Invasion, but that's very rare. Now, the only thing you need to be stronger for is the Dreaming City and the Nightfall, but once you reach 535, 540, those are going to be pretty much on par with what your power is. I recommend infusing your favorite weapons every 10 to 20 power. Now, I'm not saying don't infuse, use the weapons you like, just try to be a bit more frugal. You can also think of it this way, any new gear you get, regardless of how powerful it is, will likely only take you up by 1 or 2 power at the most, so it probably isn't going to make too much of a difference as far as the difficulty of activities you're doing, especially the one you just completed to get that item. Because remember, even if a single weapon that you have is significantly higher, it's still averaging your power to determine how much damage you do against your opponents. Also, as a quick tip, I recommend holding off on the Queen's Offering until the very end. That way you give a serious boost, hopefully, to your weapons. That way when you transfer over to the other character, you can move your strong weapons over. It'll make some serious impact in your progress of the next character. Now let's move on to a related topic, which is buying materials from Spider. So Spider sells everything you need for Infusion. His stock rotates a couple times a day, so you can find what you're looking for pretty often. This is a great way to stock up on materials and to an extent cores as well. Just keep in mind that the price of cores doubles every time you buy one that day. So just buy a few a day, assuming you have the excess shards. Now on that note, it's important to realize that Spider isn't a bargain store with occasional great prices. It's actually a currency exchange. Think of Glimmer, Shards, Data Lattice, everything you see here, think of them as currencies instead of materials, because in truth, none of it is really a good deal, because you can attain any of these items pretty quickly out in the world. It just seems like a bargain because you probably have an excess of what that item costs. If you have thousands of shards, spending 1 on every 5 Seraphite sounds like a pretty good deal, but if you're low on shards, all of a sudden it's a ripoff, right? So just keep that in mind. Think of Spider as a way to balance your currencies out. I recommend stocking up on a couple hundred of each of the destination materials, that way you won't run out when you need them out in the wild. Now, ever since Forsaken came out, we've been looking for a good Glimmer sink, and honestly, Spider's inventory is not worth the Glimmer costs. So I decided to search for another one, and I think I found it. And this also helps you save on Infusion in the long run, and it'll make more of your arsenal available to you at all times. The idea is to slowly start to bring forward your Year 1 arsenal, especially your exotics. We all have a vault full of 380 gear. As you may know, you can print out any of your Year 1 gear from collections, but what you may not know is that it prints out at about 20 under your highest potential power. So if you're 540, they will print out at 520. Now you might be thinking, I don't want to replace that old gear, it's Masterwork, I've got the kill counters, shaders, all that good stuff. The idea here isn't to replace it, but to infuse it. If you infuse a weapon with the same exact weapon, it only costs you Glimmer. First you have the Glimmer cost and the modest material cost to print them out in the first place, and then infusing him uses even more Glimmer. It's pretty expensive if you think about it, but at least it'll let you get rid of excess Glimmer that you have without really having it go to waste. Plus, some of those exotics are still really great. Cold Heart is really good, so is the Sunshot, and the Risk Runner is fantastic inside of Gambit. Don't sleep on your Year 1 arsenal. With how insanely rare exotics are in Year 2, you're probably falling back to your Year 1 guns anyways. This is a great way to bring them forward and save you a lot of materials. Anyways, those are just some of the tips that I wanted to go over while we're grinding up to 600 power. If you have any other tips and tricks that'll help streamline the process, leave them down below to share with everybody else. But anyways, drop a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for much more content right here on Nerd On. Thanks for watching, happy gaming, and I will see you all next time.